Welcome to a special edition of the Titan Protection Show. We are here in the SiriusXM Studio in the Wynn Hotel in Las Vegas, and it is ISC West 2026. We are doing a special series blending security, physical security with technology, and we've got a great lineup of speakers. We're talking AI, we're talking software, and of course drones. Have some great speakers from different manufacturers that are coming and talking about how these things are blending with physical security. It's an exciting time. This show traditionally has been integrators. I've been coming to it for 15 plus years, and it's exciting to see how it's changing and how it's morphing into integrators, physical security directors, folks that traditionally weren't attending on the technology side. We're seeing these worlds collide together. We're tackling it from a couple different angles, and you will hear some insights from the industry leaders who are down deep in it. Hope you enjoy the show. Exciting series coming, and look forward to it. Welcome to a special edition of the Titan Protection Show. We are here in the SiriusXM Studio at the Wynn Hotel in Las Vegas. It is ISC West, and we are here. We are talking, doing a special series here of different interviews, specifically focused on physical security, blending with technology. And I'm honored today to be with Fritz, Director of DFR Consulting for Flock Safety. Fritz, really appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Ryan. It's pretty, SiriusXM is a pretty big deal, right?
It's a beautiful studio.
Yeah,
yes.
It's gorgeous.
I was very lucky, and it's worked out well. Staff's great, and had some great conversations today, for sure. Have been really excited to talk to you. I've followed, we've talked before, haven't met in person, but glad to connect with you. But have followed you from years ago. You have kind of been the OG of DFR, Drone as a First Responder. Tell the audience a little bit about your background, how you got started, from a law enforcement perspective, and kind of the journey to where you are today.
Yeah, so right now, obviously, I'm at Flock Safety, and I'm helping customers get waivers and policies and stuff, and that's why I reached out to you recently. So congrats on the one-to-many waiver you got. We can talk about that later. But going back to where it all began, my background isn't in drones. I'm prior to law enforcement, a retired captain from Chula Vista Police Department. I was the UAS commander there, and I had developed this concept of sending cops to the scene first in the car, plain clothes, so they could address issues without being seen, provide intel to responding units. And then I met a guy in the drone industry who, Cape Terminus, he's still in the industry. He's working for one of our competitors now, but he was a private sector guy, and so we said, hey, let's get together, let's develop this concept of sending drones to the scene first rather than people. So the idea was just to get eyes on. And I developed a technology earlier than that called Live 911, which was the idea of getting ears onto the scene, hearing the 911 call in real time. So this was an extension of that concept. And the whole idea is for public safety, fire, police to see what's happening, hear what's happening before they get in there. Right. Ideally, maybe change the outcome, maybe not even have to go, kind of a thing. And so we happened, it seemed like the White House was listening, because they came up with this integration pilot project that encouraged public sector and private sector working together for unique use cases of drones. And we put our hat in for that, and we won. And that was a real tailwind for the city of Chula Vista to do. And we, came up with the name Drone as First Responder. And so I actually coincidentally retired right when the approval through the feds had come. And a buddy of mine took over the drone program, took it back over. He started it. I took it over, and then he got it back when I retired. And Vern Salih's in the industry as well, working for a competitor. So it's really blown up. But the idea of Drone as First Responder is just pre-positioned drones ready to go at a moment's notice. Mm-hmm. And so the idea for us was, hey, let's get a drone on the roof of the police department. We'll listen to 911 calls. We'll watch for license plate reader hits. We'll listen to the radio and anything we can fly to and get there first and see what's happening. That's the idea. And so it required some waivers from the FAA. And so that was kind of just spent a year doing that. I went to work for a competitor of ours, Skydio, for 4 years. Then a buddy of mine who started the second DFR program in Redondo Beach, Rahul Sidhu. He's a drone pilot, but he's a cop, but he's also a technology guy and a founder guy, and he started Aerodome. So I left Skydio to work with him and the team. And then Aerodome was a small startup, but doing DFR better than anybody, and so Flock Safety came and acquired Aerodome as the DFR solution for Flock Safety. And as you know, Flock Safety, they're private, they're a public safety company, a tech company that and they started off with license plate readers,
right?
And obviously gunshot detection, all kinds of information and software that intelligent software to be able to locate suspicious vehicles, suspects based on the description, plate, etc. And one of the solutions they wanted to provide was DFR, so they bought Aerodome. So that's kind of how I ended up at Flock Safety. And like I said, now I work in the regulatory space and dealing with drone program managers one-on-one, helping them set up the programs, understanding what it means to manage a program, train your pilots. I was just talking to you got one of your own that runs the whole drone program. So it's pretty complex, and it's keeping me busy, but it brought me here. So I appreciate that.
Well, no, Tom, our remote operations manager that runs the, our drone program operationally, he came from DFR. He ran a DFR for his department. And so definitely want to, get a little bit more into that, because we're seeing that where it started, and we saw that, DFR, and now how that's translating into the private security world is certainly why I think we're all here for ISC West and kind of seeing that transition. But, definitely, like I said, excited, y'all invented drone as a first responder, and kind of to see where that started. What year was that when that program was getting going?
2017 is when we met. 2018 was October of 2018 was the first launch of a DFR mission.
And most of that, from our perspective, the two things that I've followed across the years have been, we need beyond visual line of sight, a clear path to that. And then we also need a docking station. And nobody was really making docking stations because beyond visual line of sight wasn't a thing. And so now we're seeing all those things come together. And I think we saw that in the law enforcement side is patrol-led DFR, where you have the officer pops a trunk, drone out. If you have 3 officers on a scene, one of them's flying a drone, you now have 2 officers. So seeing the drone in the box proliferate has really opened up a lot, and is certainly something that has to be there in the private security world to augment or replace the security officer that's out there. So it's really interesting to see those things come together. How has that transition, from hand flying to the drone in the box changed with DFR over the years?
Yeah, I mean, so drone, like you said, patrol-led operations, hand flying, that was the first obvious use case where a drone could be useful. But then the idea of getting the drone there before anyone arrived was the idea behind DFR. And that was the distinction of okay, we can't just go there, look around and go, wow, it'd be nice to have a drone, then go back and either go to your trunk or go to the station, get it up. It's a useful tool, but it gets there late a lot of times. And we learned that with other tools in law enforcement, high-end firearms. So you'd SWAT team. I was on the SWAT team for 5 years. It'd take us an hour to get to the scene. And a lot of incidents came where it's wow, it'd be nice to have this technology, this capability there in the first moments. And that was the idea behind DFR. Get this technology there in the first moments. And then obviously all that unpacked was what kind of technology was required in dock systems, like you mentioned, the waivers that you would need to fly beyond visual line of sight. You're inside a room, you can't see the drone, you can't see the airspace. You got to have permission to fly and promise not to hit stuff.
Right.
And so that is kind of the inside baseball stuff that Tom and others are dealing with to make it happen. But when it's up and running, you don't want to give it up as a public safety agency. You just, you're finding 20% of the time you don't have to send anyone. It's not a call. And that, in terms of the private sector, and we invented DFR specifically, the concept of operations that was DFR at Chula Vista, but the idea of sending drones ahead or getting a feed of what's happening has been around forever. Military's been doing it, private security been doing it. We're doing it with fixed cameras and all kinds of stuff. And so it was an easy translation. And now Flock Safety is serving customers with drone as security, DAS. So it's a private sector angle. I know you're in the business of doing that, and I think a lot of private sector companies are providing this service for their customers. customers where you integrate it with all the rest of the tools you give them, fixed cameras, pan, tilt, zoom cameras, and now you have a flying 4-dimension pan, tilt, zoom of a drone that can follow people and get there first. And I think the FAA was, being part of the IPP, the FAA didn't know what permissions they were going to give, how dangerous it would be to have all these drones in the sky. And so they were more likely to say yes to public safety initially, just because it's a government, we're accountable. And they've got 1,000+ agencies looking at this, having the waivers to do this. We have hundreds of customers. And so I think the FAA is starting to realize, okay, the cost-benefit analysis is so in favor of using these and enabling people that the private sector, and we're getting, Part 107, BV on visual line of sight waivers like you as well, that allows private sector companies to use drones to protect their certain areas of, whether it's a business park or amusement park or a church or a school complex, having the ability to send a drone there rather than send someone out, getting in a golf cart, driving over there and maybe getting a confrontation that doesn't need to be happening, and to go there and respond via drone it's kind of a no-brainer.
Right. That last mile response piece of being able to send the drone as that responder, is very powerful. And I think you touched on it too. We're seeing 911 calls get cleared without having to send an officer because they can get on scene, figure out whether there's something that needs addressed there. We're seeing a lot of changes. The FAA has got the notice of proposed rule out for Part 108. We've been living in the waiver process and kind of seeing how that changed. Interested in your perspective on how you see those regulations changing. I think the security industry has been watching from afar to see how these things play out. One of the things that we commented on that I think will be important in this discussion, Part 108 wise, we're really hoping to see a delineation between contained and uncontained operations, because I feel like the security aspect of protecting a single property is a very different risk profile than flying long distances over people that you have to compete with, manned aircraft, other drones, all sorts of different things. What are you seeing, or what are you anticipating from a regulatory standpoint? I think that's a piece that might be interesting to security directors and folks that are out there that are thinking about, how do I get involved in this? What should we expect from a regulatory standpoint?
Yeah, so Part 108 obviously is still work in progress. It's been delayed. Reading it initially, coming from the DFR world, it was kind of written towards product delivery and point A to B type operations. But I think, obviously the FAA is aware of DFR and they're aware of the capabilities needed to do that. And our conversations recently with the FAA have been to kind of paint this use case for private sector, get them kind of comfortable with it. I kind of called it either like a bubble waiver or a canopy waiver, where you have a very limited space, limited altitude, 200 and below over property that you basically control, or the people you work for control. And you're right, you're not up at 400 feet flying across a city. The ground risk is a fraction of it. So when you can kind of paint the picture, and that was the goal of DFR, giving it a name, giving it a concept, so you can say in one word an idea that meant how you were going to operate.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that terminology, DAS, is flock safety's version of drone as security, but the concept of operations, like you said, is even easier to understand, and I think regulate towards. A drone that's over a property, flown by security personnel in a very limited area, limited altitude, for obvious community benefit. And we're seeing regulation relief right now without Part 108. We're getting it under Part 107, beyond visual line of sight. I think Part 108 will change it, make it more scalable, more turnkey for agencies. Regulation's a big deal, a big hurdle, a barrier, a blocker for people, for fear.
Yeah.
And I think that's a driver for going with vendors like Titan Protection or Flock Safety or any of our competitors. Is like, you've done the work. You got the Toms on your team doing all the work. And I say there's five A's. The DNA of DFR is the 5 A's. The aircraft, so you got to pick the right drone. The aircraft management system, so you got to have a dock system that works with the drone you want. The airspace awareness, how are you going to make sure you don't hit stuff? the autonomy aspect of it, how you're going to fly it, how you're going to use the data, how you're going to search data, and then the approvals, how you're going to get approval from the FAA and from the community. You got to solve for all 5 of those A's to get a program up and running. And that's hard to do on an a la carte basis for somebody, just an industry. So I see a lot of companies not worrying about it and coming to people that can provide a turnkey solution for that.
Yeah, no, we're seeing the exact same thing. I think the complexity, the uncertainty of it, folks want the data, they want the use of the drone, they can see what it does, but they don't really want to have the cost, headaches, and liabilities of operating it themselves. There's a lot of uncertainty with that. So we're definitely seeing that as well. And we're calling, everybody loves the acronyms, we're calling it ARP, Automated Response and Patrol. We're seeing the drone really shine in those 2 pieces. We're either responding to a triggering event, whether that be through a camera, a call for service, various technologies, or it's patrolling, looking for something to happen. You've spent a lot of time in the DFR space. Flock safety has been in both, right?
Sure.
They're in the parking lots and the license plate. That was a lot of growth happening with that, in the mobile surveillance units. What led towards drones specifically into the security industry, and how are you seeing those work together? You already kind of had a foothold in that space and kind of putting all those things together. Is it the entire ecosystem of all of those things communicating together, or what are you seeing that has led Flock into that space from a drone perspective?
Yeah, well, certainly I'm CEO, so I'm not the one making these decisions, and I don't want to speak for the vision, but obviously the vision that's been relayed is we want to provide all the tools to our customers that we can. And I know they got into the space where getting information of what's happening in the city, that's their bread and butter. That's the DNA of Flock Safety. And now how do we respond to that? How do we give the customer the ability to actually react effectively to that data?
Right.
So you get this data, it's amazing, but is there a way that we could provide a solution to respond to it, to actually solve problems, be aware of problems and then the capability of solving them? And so that's kind of, I think, the philosophy. And Aerodome was, before it was acquired, was, selling DFR to some customers, and Flock Safety was trying to sell to those same customers. And they're like, why reinvent the wheel? Why not acquire the best? So that's where that partnership, came in, and the acquisition just made sense. And it's been perfect, because so much of, even from the earliest days at DFR, was the idea, like I said, the hearing the 911 call in real time. And Flock 911 allows you to see that, see the transcript, hear the call in real time. Of course, there's competing products out there, but the idea of integrating them all into this one solution where you have a single pane of glass, you get this information, and you have a vertical stack that has control over all these input points. But with APIs, be receptive to accept any input.
Well, and that's an interesting point, and it's come up in a lot of the discussions that we've had here around the show, is we've got a lot of great technology. Mm-hmm. It seems to be that the security director, the person, the user of these technologies, they don't need more widgets. They need to figure out how to put these things together and make them useful and kind of applicable. So I think that's a great point. What have you seen that translates from the law enforcement side, DFR, into the commercial side? Are you seeing some parallels with some of these things, or some crossover in them? Are you seeing, Flock has had kind of a public-private partnership and those kind of things playing together. Do you see that continuing in the security space with drones, or is there anything that you're seeing crossover in similar ways?
Yeah, I think the overlap is obvious. I think the private sector offers a unique, knowing the story of Flock Safety, they got into the market by selling to HOAs, to selling to communities, not to public safety. When I was a cop, we had LPR cameras, license plate reader cameras, we bought from vendors, put them on our cars. They were mobile. And the idea to sell those cameras to HOAs or community groups to provide information to the police to solve crimes that happen in your area, it just blew the market wide open. And the police departments were like, wow, we're solving a lot of crime with your technology. Why not get into the game ourselves and buy it? So yeah, we're selling, these solutions to, both public safety entities, governments, as well as private companies. Yeah. And that space better than anybody. For DFR, because of the regulations, just because of the history of it, and coming through through what happened at Chula Vista and Redondo Beach and others, and the waivers, it really blew up under public safety, police generally, and we're seeing a lot more interest in fire as well. The emergency immediate response to the 911 call, which is your most obvious emergency, but from a private security standpoint, it's the same use case. We have stuff happening on our property we got to respond to.
Right.
Like, how do we do that safely? How do we do that quickly? It's like a kind of a no-brainer.
Well, and I've been following this drone and private security thing for years. I mean, I got my hands on my first drone in 2012 and then was wrestling with how do I get this into the security space. Yeah, it was the Inspire 1. If you remember that drone, is still an awesome drone. I still have that drone and fly it. But, the regulation piece and all of that. But over the years, I was really watching DFR because I wondered, I'm into aviation and public safety and drone, do I like this because it's cool and techie, or is it actually applicable? And one of the things that I would hear from folks in DFR is they get a drone out there, but then they're starting to hear the officers on the street ask, is there a drone up? Or is there, so they're seeing actual great use cases. The other one we were a little bit surprised by was the overwatch capability. You end up with another set of eyes above, and we've had our security officers, because a lot of times we'll blend this together where we might have boots on the ground and the drone moving around. And we've had some really good use cases where we had a guy with a machete and an officer had to confront him, and we could see him looking up at the drone, and the officer just felt like, it felt better that I had somebody watching over me, and it was kind of an extra set of eyes and also a deterrent maybe. But just kind of curious, were you seeing that from an adoption standpoint when Chula Vista started in some of these departments? How did that go? Did that start with some pilot programs and then kind of build up, or did you kind of start big, and how did that develop?
So we just started with one drone launching off the roof of the police department, and we're like, hey, let's just start responding to calls for service and see what happens.
Right.
It was a big risk. The chief at the time, Roxanne Kennedy, she's a trailblazer, visionary. She had a lot of trust in her staff. She, there's a story behind it in terms of a riot in the neighboring city, and so we were looking for ways to respond better. And there was ambushes in Texas, and it was kind of it was a great opportunity and timing. And the IPP helped in terms of hey, this is part of a federal program. There's some city got behind her. But anyway, we didn't know what would be the response. And it was a lot of cost and stuff. And we thought, we had to have people on the roof. We didn't have the waivers to just take them off the roof. We had to have someone up there watching the drone, and someone obviously switching batteries, something we knew at some point there'd be waivers and a dock to replace that and make it scalable. So we were just doing it to show the value to everybody. And our hope was it would take off like it did. And we were waiting for the use case, the aha moment, and we got it with a domestic violence that, we didn't even know was a call. It's probably holding there. The drone pilot decides to fly out there, and you see this female in a car trying to run over her husband on a motorcycle, and you're like, whoa, hey, this is a big deal. Let's get the cops there. And we had another use case, which is pretty famous now, with a guy sitting out front of a taco shop playing with what looked like a gun.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Got the drone on scene. You could see it looked like a gun, but it was a lighter. And so cops rolling into that scene could see the video, knew it was a lighter. They actually could zoom in and see the thing light a cigarette. So you're like, okay, I have a high comfort level. I don't have to shoot this guy if he points it at me. And it has changed the game. And at that point, you're like, wow, we're proving a negative. Like, we know how much something like that would cost the city if it went wrong.
Yeah.
OIS, officer involved shooting, and hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, if not to mention loss of life. You can justify the solution on the money you didn't spend, and the downstream of getting someone in custody that would have been a whodunit. I mean, it really started paying off. And flock safety, I know a lot of our competitors, what we do is we really try and highlight the wins, because that's what sells it. You're like, okay, it's hard to imagine what we're going to use it, but when you start to see, like you said, an example, you're like, whoa, that changed the game. Like, how do we live without it? And when you have command staff watching, whether it's police department and the chief and the captains are watching the feed on their cell phone, and now they used to live with what came over to the radio, and it was their imagination what was happening, and now they can actually see it, and they're not calling the watch commander anymore because they know what everyone else knows, and they see how their people are, and everyone knows they're being watched, so this accountability goes, and it's just like there's no going back as a command or as someone who's running a company or something, where you can actually see the problem and know that decisions are being made, or if not, you have an ability to intervene.
Yeah. Well, it's super exciting because I think we're now, you lived on the forefront of DFR, and now we're kind of seeing this next frontier with security and kind of the use cases that arise. And that sparked another, being able to share the streams live. We had a customer that they were having a protest that they weren't protesting their business, but they were on the corner that, and they were protesting something else. And the leadership really wanted to be able to see. They didn't know whether they were expecting 300 people or 10, but we were able to share just a link in live time, text to somebody, and they're watching along, and they have the comfort, okay, that's only 5 people. We're not that worried about it. So it's super exciting to, see where this is going. We're continually learning a lot and, new use cases and types of things. So it's really interesting. Y'all are exhibiting here at ISC West.
That's right. Got a good booth.
Yeah. Booth number 11127. Would definitely encourage everybody to stop by Flock Safety booth, reach out to Fritz. We'll have some links, LinkedIn, link to your website and those types of things. If folks have questions, certainly reach out. I really appreciate you being on. Leaving the audience with one piece here. You're a security director, you're walking the show floor, you're thinking about drones and different technology. What advice would you give to somebody kind of starting out as they're exploring drones as security on their property?
So my first goal, obviously, is to sell a concept of get a drone for your property. Like you said, the Overwatch is a unique angle. You're going to see the whole picture. Once you have that, you don't want to give it up. So the concept of drone as security, or drone to first responder, or drone integrated in your operations, hopefully just visit booths that sell that. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the ones that understand it, have a team, and have a suite of product that's integrated. Like you said, it's just bringing all these information and making it usable for people, training them, getting them the regulations, getting the software. I mean, obviously, I'm pitching Flock Safety here. I think you could go by and see that we're the best team for that. But that's what I would be looking for. Is it's probably too complex to a la carte it yourself. I'd be looking for a company that can do it for you. That's all they do. They've already jumped all the hurdles, and and once you have it, you won't go back.
I totally agree. Fritz, I really appreciate you coming on. It's an honor to speak with you and to meet you in person. We've talked a lot, and I've followed you along the years. So
I appreciate the invite.
Really appreciate you coming along, and visit Fritz and the Flock Safety folks at booth 11127. Appreciate y'all tuning in. We will check out or talk to you next time.